Salem, Massachusetts, one of my favorite places in the world to visit and where I've gotten a couple tattoos. But today we're not talking about that. We are going to be talking about the history of Salem and the witch trials. We've all heard stories and we've all seen movies. But have you heard the truth? Now, what could possibly go wrong when religion has a big influence on the laws? Yeah, we've seen how that's gone down a few times. So guys, welcome today to the haunted estate. Let's sip the tea before we spill the tea. Welcome to another video in which we unravel the darkest and most mysterious stories in history. Today, we will delve into one of the most chilling episodes on colonial America, the Salem witch trials. These trials, which took place between 1692 and 1693, left an undeniable mark on the history of the United States. It is a story of paranoia, betrayal, and horror that continues to reverberate through the centuries. So join me on this journey to Salem, where fear became a deadly weapon. Thank you, Adam. We must keep the mastiff. Mastiff? Mastoof. In 17th century Europe, thousands of women were accused of witchcraft, and they were burned at the stake after being subjected to horrific tortures. Much has been written about the barbarity and the religious fanaticism that took place in the European continent, but less known are the similar acts that took place in colonial America. Around the year 1620, the first settlers from England and the Netherlands arrived to the lands of New England, known as the Pilgrims. They founded the first colonies such as Connecticut, Boston, and Springfield. In these lands, inhabited by the Mohegan Potomac, or Massachusetts indigenous people, nearly 25 cases of witchcraft occurred, although the most remembered, gruesome, and impactful were the ones that happened in the village of Salem in the English colony of Massachusetts. The Puritans. Before attempting...
Talk about something before you continue.
Okay.
We've had this before. Are you saying Massachusetts right?
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
It's not Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Or massive two shits.
Massachusetts.
You used to mess it up all the time.
I know!
Selena's manager is from Boston.
Yeah, he'll kill me.
And he was calling her out so bad.
Before attempting to understand the Salem trials, we must first take a small step back in time to place ourselves in the historical and social context of the era and consider some points. At the end of the 17th century, the Massachusetts Bay Colony was the place of strict Puritan morality and constant tension. The Puritans, a religious group that sought to purify the Church of England, had established their communities in the New World with the hope of creating a society based on their strict religious beliefs. With their somewhat exaggerated standards and behaviors reflecting their commitment to the Protestant Reformation and their desire to purify the Church of England of Catholic influences, the Puritans were Calvinists who believed in predestination, justification by faith, and sanctification. They also accepted the authority of the Bible and rejected the Catholic liturgy and the hierarchical structure of the Anglican Church. In the Puritan Church, gender roles were clearly defined. Men were the leaders and preachers, while women focused on the domestic life. The Puritans believed in discipline and correction as a means of maintaining morality and obedience. Punishments included excommunication, suspension of communion rites, and in extreme cases, expulsion from the community. But these were not their only limits. The extremist behavior observed in the Puritan Church was not only to demoralize, but also to kill. Now, let's fast forward a few years to 1692. Salem Village, known as Danvers, Massachusetts, was a community in conflict. Disputes over land, inheritance, and spiritual leadership had divided the townspeople into warring factions. In addition,
You can divide fractions,
Warring.
but they were warring factions.
they were warring factions. Okay, the townspeople into warring factions. In addition, war between colonists and Native American people on their frontier added to the sense of insecurity and fear. Reverend Samuel Parris, a Puritan minister, had settled in the Salem village with his family, including his daughter Betty and niece Abigail Williams. Parris, a stern, pious man, was at the center of many of the community's disputes.
Just a problem causer.
Yeah, old white man, probably. Life in Salem Village was not easy. The winters were harsh and the land difficult to farm, and tensions with natives were ever present. The community was united by its religious beliefs, but was also divided by personal quarrels and economic rivalries. The sermons of Puritan ministers constantly warned the dangers of sin and the omnipresence of the devil, fueling an atmosphere of fear and, honestly, tons of suspicion.
Some people have a problem with modern day churches, like Christians and stuff, because they don't talk about the devil anymore.
No.
They just talk about God.
And they glaze over
but
it all.
They don't talk about the evil. And
Good can't exist without evil.
Exactly.
It is what it is.
Like back in the day, I feel like they used to talk about the devil and God and the battle and of the religious wars.
And I feel like that has so much more to do than just God and the devil. I feel like that has so much to deal with in normal life.
Well, yeah.
The balance of good and evil.
How do you take like stories from your church and relate to them if you're not talking about the bad things that you're going to come across?
Amen, brother. It is said that the real terror began in the winter of 1692, marking the beginning of a chain of events that would lead to a collective hysteria. It all began when Betty Paris and Abigail Williams began exhibiting strange and inexplicable behavior. The girls suffered convulsions, screamed piercingly, and fell into trances, and spoke in unknown languages. The local physician, William Griggs, could find no medical explanation and suggested that the girls were under the influence of witchcraft. Because one day you go to the doctor and he tells you to take some paracetamol to cure your demonic possession. Dude, have you read some of my old medical books? There were doctors who would literally
They're just not educated enough.
Self-pleasure women to cure things in the office. Or they'd be like, I literally read in a book and it said, to make a woman happy and keep her busy for the afternoon, give her a piece of cheese. It says that.
Bit of a sex indoctrination going on in the schools for doctors back then.
Dude.
I feel like they set that shit right up.
Oh, yeah. The community, already tense and superstitious, panicked. The girls, under pressure, accused 3 women of being responsible for their torment. Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne. But what were these women really accused of? Let's start with Tituba. She was a Caribbean slave in the household of the Reverend Samuel Paris in Salem Village. Little is known about her life before she arrived in Salem, but her role in the witch trials is crucial. She was known for telling stories of magic and folklore to the young girls in the Paris household, including Betty Paris and her cousin, Abigail Williams.
Imagine the stories she would have from back in her lines and lineage.
It'd be amazing. It'd be amazing. And then you go to Puritans, which are people who have not heard anything. They've only heard the word of God. They don't listen to music. They live strict lives. And then you're getting told things about magic. You're going to believe it.
Yeah, well, yeah, because, all they know is religion back then, right? And they truly believed in it. There was no other option, and there was no internet to see other things going on in other places in the world.
I can tell this is about to spiral. Tituba was first accused of witchcraft when the girls began exhibiting strange behavior. The girls claimed that Tituba had taught them to predict the future by using folk magic methods. Under pressure and possibly torture, Tituba confessed to being a witch, vividly describing her pacts with the devil and encounters with other witches. Tituba even claimed to have a demonic creature trapped in a cage, adding to the panic. Bet they never found that.
No.
Bet they never found it.
Not a chance.
Her confession, though coerced, served to legitimize the hysteria that gripped Salem. She also mentioned that other women in the village were practicing witchcraft, which widened the circle of suspicion.
They probably tortured her to get this out of her.
Oh, she made it up.
This is all made up. She was probably just like a gardener and had some herbal remedies.
Well, I'm curious it's probably going to come up, but we've all heard the thing about the bad wheat, and I'm curious to see if that's going to come up. Even nowadays, there's famous cases where they're like, I just wanted to go home. I've been questioned for hours. I told them what they want just so I could get out of the situation. And that's what happened here.
Probably weren't even witches. They were probably just they could have been witches, but I don't
We'll
know
see.
how truly evil they were.
Exactly. Tituba's confession had a ripple fear effect. She claims that there were other witches in the community that led to more suspicions and accusations. Hysteria spread quickly, and soon any unusual behavior or personal disagreement could become sufficient grounds for an accusation of witchcraft. Sarah Good, on the other hand, was a destitute and pregnant woman who lived off the charity of her neighbors. She was known for her erratic behavior and violent temper, making her an unpopular and marginalized figure in the community. Good wandered the town begging for food and shelter, and her refusal to conform to Puritan standards of behavior and piety made her the suspect in the eyes of her neighbors. Good was accused of witchcraft by the same girls who had accused Tituba. Her nomadic lifestyle and lack of respect for Puritan social conventions made her an easy target. During her trial, Sarah Good vehemently denied the charges, but her character and social position condemned her before a court of predisposed to believe the worst of her. In addition, her answers to the court's questions and her inability to recite traditional Christian prayers.
I wish Christians were paired.
Right? And her inability to recite traditional Christian prayers correctly were used as evidence of her guilt. Then there was Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who had caused controversy in the community because of her marriage to a man of lower social standing, and her struggle to control her late husband's inheritance, which went against the norms of the time. Osborne rarely attended church, raising further suspicions about her faith and her morals. Tensions over land disputes and her reclusiveness made her an easy target. The girls also accused Osborne, claiming that her spirit had attacked them. During her trial, Osborne denied all charges, but like Sarah Good, her behavior and distance from the community life worked against her. The combination of social prejudice and superstition honestly sealed her fate. Here we must pause and discuss the judicial system of the time. It was rudimentary and often unfair, especially in witchcraft cases. The judicial process in the Salem trials unfolded in several stages. First, there were preliminary hearings in which the accused were publicly questioned. These sessions were tumultuous, with crowds watching and alleged victims giving dramatic testimony. One of the most controversial aspects of the trials was the admission of spectral evidence. According to Puritan belief, only a witch could allow her spirit to be used by the devil to harm others. Thus, if someone claimed that a defendant's ghost had attacked them, this was considered sufficient evidence of guilt.
Oh my god.
That would never stand today.
Just like a high school he said, she said bullshit
Literally.
situation.
And it's just a popularity contest. If the preliminary investigation suggested guilt, the case went to the grand jury, which reviewed the evidence and decided whether there was enough for a formal trial. During the trials, defendants would be convicted based on various types of evidence, including coerced confessions, spectral testimony, and the touch test, which claimed that if the defendant touched a victim while in a trance, the victim would respond. What? As time passed, the accusations multiplied. Confessions obtained through torture or coercion led to new accusations. The girls continued to point the finger at more people, and soon the accusations spread to nearby towns. No one was safe. Even prominent members of the community were accused. I remember learning on these trials, Adam, that if somebody wanted your land, you got accused.
Right.
If somebody wanted your money, you got accused. If somebody,
just a snowball effect.
Dude, it was
They're
just,
like, oh, this is an easy way just to fuck with everybody.
you got what you wanted. If there's somebody you hated, if there was someone who stuck out, they were a witch.
All depending on your social,
Yeah.
social status.
Or if they didn't like you, looking at you the wrong way, all they had to do was convince the Puritans around them. One notable example is Ann Putnam Jr., one of the accused girls who accused 62 people. The Putnam family, which she belonged to, used the accusations to attack their enemies. The paranoia grew to the point where any behavior or comment could be seen as evidence of witchcraft, like I said. Among the accused was Rebecca Nurse, a respected elder in the community. Despite her impeccable reputation, Nurse was accused and tried. The court initially declared her innocent, but the pressure from the crowd and the insistence of the accusers led to the verdict being overturned. Right there, she was great in the community. She had friends. She was upholding. People were jealous. This is a jealous thing.
And like the power that you get, like no one could just have power that simply back then. So once this rolled through and there was an easy way to gain power, obviously a lot of these people were not spiritually like forward thinking and just fucking terrible people.
Yep. Nurse was ultimately convicted and executed because she was cool. Because she was a cool kid. Another prominent case was that of Reverend George Burroughs. Burroughs, a former minister of Salem Village, was accused of being the leader of a coven of witches. During his execution, he recited the Lord's Prayer perfectly, which was considered impossible for a witch to do. Nevertheless, he was with the other accused. What? Now, let's move on to those executions. The Special Court of Oyer and Terminer, established to conduct the Salem witch trials in 1692. They were responsible for a series of convictions and executions that left an undeniable mark on American history. A total of 20 people were condemned to death, 19 of whom were on Gallows Hill, and one, Giles Corey, was crushed to death. The executions and the aftermath of the trials reflect this time and the hysteria, the injustice, and the fear that forever changed the community of Salem.
So the hill, is that where you guys were on the sidewalk?
Yeah, so when we went...
Really much to go there and see, but it is the spot where that happened.
Well, what was really interesting is we ended up in this child's park, and that's where the locals think that the actual happened. So in the ghost videos, we're playing on the slide and stuff. That's where they think that the actual happened.
You connected to something there.
Oh, did we ever? It's very active. We did go to like the spot where all the things were, but it's literally along a road and it just doesn't have the vibes. I think the most popular places where I felt the most energy was at that park. And then it was not downtown Salem. It was kind of like behind, kind of where Die With Your Boots are on our. Because that's where they think that the man was crushed to death. And I feel like that was like actually true. So guys, Gallows Hills, a grim and desolate place on the outskirts of Salem, became the site of the executions. This place, shrouded in mystery and legend, housed the gallows where those accused of witchcraft met their fate. The atmosphere at Gallows Hill was macabre and oppressive as crowds gathered to witness the executions. These public events drew people from far and wide, driven by both fear and morbid fascination. The executions on Gallows Hill were not only acts of justice, but also spectacles that fueled the collective. Crowds watched the accused climb the scaffold, heard their pleas of innocence, and watched the noose tighten around their necks. These moments were etched into the memories of those present and served as a constant reminder of the danger of witchcraft and the need to eradicate it at all costs. Why? What are they doing wrong?
I mean, we need to eradicate any evil doing.
But why does anyone think a witch is evil?
Doing by religious people too. It's just, you can't stereotype.
I can tell you right now that I have never heard of evil doing of a real witch.
No, same.
That's not a witch.
It's out there, but it's not common.
Those are witches.
No, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
That's why you can't use the blanket term. It's so silly. There's terrible people in every walk of life, in every type of religion.
It's also like the word pagan. Pagan is just any religion that doesn't fall under the umbrella.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the most brutal and emblematic cases of the Salem trials was that of Giles Corey, an elderly man in his 80s. Corey was accused of witchcraft along with his wife Martha Corey. However, he refused to plead guilty or innocent, a strategy designed to protect his family's property from confiscation by the state. The refusal led to one of the cruelest forms of execution: pressure. During this torture, the judges placed increasingly heavy stones on his chest, hoping that Corey would confess. He endured the agony for 2 days, and his last words were, "More weight." Giles Corey's death without a formal trial highlighted the brutality and injustice of the Salem judicial process. Badass, Giles, I'm thinking of you. You know, not all of them were cases of women, but there were also cases of men. Although they were very few. For example, there is the case of John Proctor, known for his courageous stand against accusations of witchcraft and his tragic fate. A respected farmer and tavern keeper in the Salem community, Proctor stood out for his strong character and his outspoken criticism of the hysteria that gripped the colony. Our friend, John Proctor, became one of the most persistent critics of the accusations, believing them to be false and driven by personal vendettas. Yep, this attitude placed him squarely in the crosshairs of accusations. In addition, his wife, Elizabeth, was accused of witchcraft, and John vigorously defended her, further fueling suspicion against himself.
It's always the farmers and tavern owners that are like the real politicians and like.
Well, dude, it's like nowadays when you look at like everything that happened with. You look at this, it's like it's the people that are running the society and the people who are on top of things. They're the ones that say something, because they're the ones that are actually like doing it, you know. On March 23rd, 1692, John Proctor was arrested on charges brought by Mary Warren, one of the young women living with the Proctors who had been behaving strangely. Mary, initially one of the afflicted, changed her story several times, further complicating John's situation. During the trial, Proctor maintained his innocence and openly criticized the spectral evidence. Testimony, which was of ghostly sightings, that was the preliminary evidence used in the trials. Despite his efforts to discredit the charges and the trial, John Proctor was convicted of witchcraft. Throughout the trial, Proctor tried to save his pregnant wife, whose execution was postponed due to her condition. However, on August 19th, 1692, John was executed on Gallows Hill, along with other defendants. It wasn't just a matter of killing to save lives, but also to eliminating those who disagreed. The atmosphere in Salem became increasingly tense and dangerous as the collective hysteria took hold. Fear of the devil and witchcraft justified any atrocity, and no one was safe from accusation. Entire families were torn apart by accusations, and old grudges and personal rivalries turned to accusations of witchcraft. Paranoia spread quickly, and the community crumbled under the weight of fear and suspicion.
Sound a little familiar to something that happened not too long ago? We won't say the word.
Wait, tell me.
There was big division and fights between families.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Sorry. The executions and the injustices of the trials left deep scars on Salem. Survivors were traumatized, and Salem's reputation as just a pious community was irreparably damaged. The specter of injustice hung over the community, and the trust among neighbors collapsed. Victims' families faced stigma and economic loss, and many Salem residents moved away to escape the shadow of the trials. With the number of deaths this town has on its shoulders, it's obvious that in addition to the real stories, there are chilling legends that unsettle visitors to the city. I love Salem, like literally so much. Salem's current urban legends that include the ghost of Gallows Hill and the Rockefellers legend has its descendants of the accused families passed on the secret location of Gallows Hill to later family members. Bone fragments are said to have been found there, although their origin has never been determined. The legend also suggests that these skeletal remains may belong to the victims of the witch trials. At Rockefeller's, a restaurant in the heart of Salem, encounters with the ghost of the minister of the black suit have been reported. Legend has it that the minister was deeply depressed and committed slide where the building now stands. Since Rockefeller's opened, both staff and guests have encountered the minister's ghost. The ghost is often described as wearing a black suit and appearing rather somber. In addition to these sites, Salem also boasts a historic district that contains the highest concentration of colonial buildings in the United States. The Samuel McIntyre district is a must-see, featuring the homes of the architect and master woodcarver who practiced in Salem. The city is also home to the Peabody Essex Museum, the oldest museum in the United States, which houses over 1 million artifacts, including a significant collection of Asian art.
Have you been there?
No, I didn't even know that.
Check that out.
Yeah, and now you may be wondering, Selena, how in the world did they know who the witches were and who they weren't? Well, several methods and tests were used to determine if a person, especially a woman, was a witch. These methods, often based in superstition and false beliefs, but you should hear this. First, there was a pricking test. It was believed that witches had a devil's mark on their body, which could be a wart, a mole, a scar, or any skin blemish.
Kind of like when fake psychics are trying to stab at things in the dark.
Yeah.
Like everybody.
Do you have a mole on the left side of your body?
Right.
As pickers would often pick these marks with a needle or a pin. If the mark didn't bleed or the accused showed no pain, it was considered evidence of witchcraft, as it was believed that the devil had numbed that area of the body. What? These can be considered forced and torturous tests that were common. The accused underwent intense interrogation and physical torture to force a confession. There was also the swimming test or water torture. This was another common practice based on the belief that water was a pure element which could repel a witch. The hands and the feet of the accused would be bound.
They don't drink water.
Yep, listen to this.
They're alive without drinking water.
The hands and the feet of the accused would be bound and they would be thrown into a body of water. If they floated, they were considered a witch because the water would reject them. If they sank, they were innocent, though ironically, many innocents drowned before they could be rescued.
Bet.
Oh my gosh. Physical examinations and the devil's mark couldn't be left out. In addition to the needle tests, extensive physical examinations were conducted to find the devil's mark. The authorities looked for any physical anomaly that could be interpreted as a sign of witchcraft. These marks were considered tangible evidence of a pact with the devil. It was also believed that the witch couldn't recite sacred prayers. My God, I really want a pear. Couldn't recite sacred prayers correctly. During trials, the accused were forced to recite the Lord's Prayer or passages from the Bible. Any mistake or hesitation was considered a sign of witchcraft. Oh, I'd be doomed! I can't even read. What was Paul 11 said? I don't know.
Not only were they uneducated back then, there was some very educated people, but just the uneducation of this system and just the ruthlessness of it to be abused is
Painful.
Just painful.
In addition, it was common for defendants already imprisoned for witchcraft to be pressured to name other accomplices in exchange for leniency. These additional accusations often stemmed from personal grievances or desperate attempts to save themselves. While this may sound like a lot of fantasy and fiction, there were theories behind this story that would fill in the blanks. One of the most popular theories is that there was the mold on the rye, known as convulsive ergotism.
So I'm pretty sure that's ergot fungus.
Ergot fungus, yeah.
Which is actually LSD.
Yes, and that causes hallucinations and strange behavior, and that is totally what could have led to the accusations of witchcraft.
Oh, it makes so much sense.
Yeah. According to this theory, the mold on rye, which contains a fungus called claviceps purpura, can cause symptoms similar to those described by the affected girls. such as temporary paralysis, hallucinations, and muscle contractions. However, this theory does not explain the hysteria lasting until 1693, or why many colonists continued to believe in witchcraft after the trials ended. Another theory is that social and economic tensions between different fractions of the Salem community, such as the Porter faction and the Putnam faction, played a significant role in creating hysteria. The Putnams, in particular, were known for their influence and power in the community, and some historians have suggested that they used accusations of witchcraft to consolidate their position and eliminate their opponents. Ding ding ding.
If it's never, a lot of the times it's never one specific thing. Something will happen, and
It's all building, man.
That'll spark off the users and abusers of situations.
It's a mudslide. As for land and other motives, it's been suggested that concerns and disputes over land and property also played a role in the accusations. For example, some historians have suggested that accusations of witchcraft were used to remove people who owned land or resources that others wanted. In addition, beliefs about witchcraft and magic were tied to land and nature, as it was believed that witches could control the weather, crops, and other aspects of nature. Damn, bro. Global warming. Fortunately, this terror did not last for totally ever. Over time, the extent of the injustice of the Salem trials became clear. In January 1693, Governor William Phips dissolved the Court of Oyer and Terminer and released many of the remaining defendants. As a result, officials and the community began to reflect on the events and honestly try and seek some redemption.
Yeah.
In 1702, the Massachusetts General Court declared the trials illegal. In 1711, the state passed an act restoring the rights and good names of the condemned and granting compensation to their heirs. But the emotional and psychological damage continued into 1957. The state of Massachusetts issued a formal apology for the events of 1692, and in 1992, a monument was erected in Salem to commemorate the victims. Although more than 330 years have passed since the trials, the town remains a popular tourist destination and a symbol of religious persecution and miscarriage of justice. Today, Salem is a town that honors its past and strives to remember the tragedy that occurred there. The city has several historic sites that commemorate the witch trials, such as the Salem Witch Trial Memorial, dedicated in 1992, and Proctor's Ledge, Proctor's Ledge, where the executions took place. These sites have been visited by more than 1 million people each year, generating more than $100 million in tourism. Guys, you're shoulder to shoulder if you go there in October, I'm telling you. Most visitors come to honor the history of the trials, but others are interested in the city's colonial architecture and maritime history, or like me, all of the really cool shops. Today, Salem can be seen as a city that has moved beyond its tragic history of the witch trials and became a popular tourist destination and a symbol of religious persecution that was full of flawed justice. The city honors its past while striving to remember the tragedy that occurred there, offering a range of educational and cultural opportunities for residents and visitors alike. And again, the really, really cool shops.
Yeah, the shops.
Right.
Well, didn't they say that a lot of the witches fled to New Orleans?
Yeah, there's lots of, apparently the real witches went to New Orleans, and then a lot of people went to, there's New Salem or something like that. That's another video, bro. Yeah. The reality behind all of this is that sometimes belief and fear can go too far. After such a dark time, there was a rethinking of how certain things were perceived, leading to a different path that involved fewer heads being cut off.
Oh, well, isn't that great?
Yeah. Salem was clearly the epicenter of chaos, and ultimately, no one would be held accountable for the innocent lives lost. It was protected by law, and fortunately, today it remains a mere legend in a grim tale of history. So there it is, guys, a bunch on Salem and the witch trials. Please do visit Salem. It's really cool. It's where I've bought a lot of my clothes, but make sure to respect those witches or not witches while you're there. So until next time, Boo Crew, get your broom, we heading out. I've had to poop so bad.
Away.
I have to poop so bad.
Run.
I have to go. I'm sorry, bye. Who believed in predestination? Adam. Predestination. The Puritans were Calvinists who believed in predestination, justification by faith, and sanctification. Did I get it? I'm just going to say that because that's close enough.